Welcome to the Fast Break. I'm Justin Young, and he's Griffin Greenberg. We appreciate you tuning in today, right here on HoopSeen TV, only on YouTube. And Griffin, you've been going all over the country covering the NIBC, and this is going to be one of those kind of an NIBC update from some of the action. But as two Arizona guys now, first of all, congratulations on surviving the sub-zero temperatures of rural Indiana. Congrats, you made it.
I appreciate it. I'll have to do it, but again, out there in the cold this coming weekend, but we're getting through there.
I thought maybe we may have to have a Bear Grylls special or something with Griffin Greenberg out there in the Midwest in these cold temperatures. So I'm glad you made it back in one piece, and I'm glad that we didn't have to employ Bear Grylls for a special. Although it'd be pretty cool, I'd watch it.
That would be.
Is that your first time to ever go to Indiana to watch basketball?
Yeah, it was actually. Great basketball state. It was fun showing out there at the Port Invitational. I think bringing in Cathedral and Simeon, those non-NIBC kind of more local teams really helped. And but really good crowd and fun environment.
No, I love it. Anytime you can go watch some basketball in Indiana at any level, I think you got to go do it for sure. So 3 days of action for the NIBC. And the NIBC, for those that aren't really familiar, it is a collection of some of the top high school teams in the country. A lot of these prep schools or basketball schools per se. And right now we'll kind of do like a really quick walkthrough of the standings after the action. Montverde right now sits at number 1 at 7-1, which is not a surprise. I mean, Montverde's been a powerhouse for quite some time, and you kind of know when they're on the calendar that they're going to get everybody's best shot. So they're number 1 in the league at 7-1. But also in the league is AZ Compass Prep out here in Chandler, Arizona. Sunrise Christian is in there from Kansas, from Wichita area. IMG down in Florida. Long Island Christian, Wasatch Academy out of Utah, Oak Hill Academy, Legacy out of South Carolina. Who am I forgetting? Bishop Walsh out of Maryland. Did I get everybody?
La
Lumiere. Yeah, obviously La Lumiere from Indiana. So that's the NIBC, and they compete against each other like a conference, just like the ACC or Pac-12 or Big 12 or anything like that, Big 10. So that's the idea of it. You can probably have seen some of these games already on ESPN or ESPN Plus. So that's just kind of a quick little update as to what the NIBC is. And Griffin, when we look at this weekend, it seems like the standings, based on what we saw with Montverde being 7-1, you go all the way down tied for 4th at 4-2 with IMG and LaLu, that the parity in the league is really, really healthy, kind of like what we see with college basketball right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say these top 5 teams all have a big chance to win Geico this year, and all could easily qualify just in this conference alone. And, you can even argue more of these teams, but I feel like this is one of the most balanced years for these very top high school basketball teams that we've seen.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few of it. You obviously have. You've been to quite a few of them where, one day you may have, Compass beating Montverde, but then, Wasatch beating Compass, and then, LaLu going through and really being competitive, and IMG against. I mean, just every day, every matchup, there seems to be some sort of fluctuation right now as we're kind of heading into the home stretch here of the NIBC. Well, let's kind of break down what you saw there in Indiana. And the number one headline, obviously, is Montverde sitting at 7-1. But one thing that we've talked about this team is like, what's the identity of this team? They've got tons of talent, right? There's no doubt about it. They've got tons of guys. But in years past, you've seen, guys like, Ben Simmons being the guy, or RJ Barrett. They've always had like an alpha. And we saw a little bit of an emergent of an alpha in Indiana. What was your takeaway with Montverde?
I mean, the big headline of the weekend, and maybe this whole NIBC season for, a 2-game span at an event, was Derek Queen's performance. I mean, 29 points, averaged over 2 games. He broke this season's record, which was previously held by VJ Edgecombe, who, you and I love over at Long Island Lutheran, for points in a game. So Queen had 34 and 11 that first game. And we mentioned these NIBC teams are ultra competitive. So he's doing this against some of the top players in the nation. He had that 34 and 11 against Sunrise, who, their center is John Bull, a 5-star center. So, I mean, Queen's he's been very impressive leading up to this. I know Montverde, couple losses on the season overall for them. And they've had some questions at times, I feel like, with, who kind of their go-to guys are. It's not like, you don't have a Dariq Whitehead as of last year who will single-handedly take over every single game. We've seen a few of that from different players this season, I feel like, from them. But this is the time of the season where those questions should really be start to, have been answered. And I think Montverde is going to keep rolling with Queen and play, essentially through him. We saw earlier this year, Chris Johnson was amazing for them
Yep.
out at Border League, and a little bit after hasn't been as great. I mean, it's hard to keep up that 25 point per game average when you're filled with a team of 7 5 stars. But I feel like Queen is the right player for them to play through, and it showed as he's putting in work against a 5 star center and many other top competition in the NIBC.
Yeah, the Baltimore native is now in his second year of starting. I saw a really interesting note on Twitter from a friend of ours, Andrew Slater, and I haven't confirmed it, but I did find it to be really, really interesting. He said that every 2-year starter that's played at Montverde under Kevin Boyle. Kevin Sutton was a previous coach, an old friend of mine, has played in the NBA, which is a really fascinating stat if it is accurate, which I'm sure it is if Andrew tweeted that out there. But Derek Queen falls in that category. When he came down there from Baltimore, he was a big kid, had some weight on him, and we've seen in years past them doing a great job of developing guys, getting them in the weight room, getting them on nutrition. And I think too, I've got to think that if you're playing against guys like, KJ Evans every single day going to Oregon, who's also a guy that, some people has a 5-star, and I'm totally drawing a blank. My head's gone completely confusing. Who else is on that team in the front line?
Front line, like we mentioned, they have Chris, now Curtis Givens, because they just lost.
Well, that's a backcourt, but like inside, like who are their interior players?
Yeah. Sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
Yeah, who is he competing against every day in practice? I'm totally drawing a blank. I've got the roster.
Newell's up there.
Yeah, Ace and Newell. Yeah, exactly. Sean Stewart, Cooper Flagg. There we go. I knew it would come to me. We're at the end of the day when we're recording this, so my old brain just kind of shuts down sometimes, Griff. But I think that has to help out, right, with Derek Queen. He's going to have to learn how to move his feet defensively. He's going to have to step out and guard some shooters. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, his bread and butter is right there at the basket.
I mean, definitely. And his footwork's improved a lot since we've seen it. Last year, he didn't get as much run as he obviously would have wanted, but that's tough when you're following Malik Renew, big man who's playing very well at Indiana. But I feel like he's their go-to guy, and they should lean on him, following the rest of the season, especially in a league where he's obviously right now the best big man.
I'd be interested. I'm a big guy, right? Like I love, my favorite player growing up was Shaq. Like I loved LSU. I loved watching Shaq. I love, David Robinson. I love Tim Duncan. And as we got, I love Karl Malone. I love big, strong, powerful players. As the game's kind of been Curryized, if you will, where everyone's starting to shoot, you're starting to see more of a move back to more, impactful 5 guys. Like, I don't know what position you call Jokic at all. And I'm not saying Derek Queen is Jokic at all, but it's cool to see big guys kind of coming back into the cool kind of part of basketball. So anyway, shout out to you, Derek Queen. Hopefully you bring it back. Well, let's pivot a little bit with Montverde. Again, they're 7-1. They're sitting on top right now of the NIBC, and Derek Queen is really, I think he's playing, like you said, as well as anybody. Another big guy, not part of the NIBC, but I think it is worth mentioning here, is Cathedral. Like you said, a local program from Indiana. On that team is Xavier Booker, who a guy that we're really familiar with HoopSeen, and played on the NYDLA circuit. And, we saw on the Best of South and Grassroots Showcase and a number of other program or events over the course of the last couple of years. They take on Simeon, who we saw here at the Hoop Hall West. They don't have like a superstar, like a top 50 guy, but that's a freaking dang good team, man. How would that matchup play out?
It feels like this team overall, player to player, is just very underrated, and they keep. Yeah. I feel like they keep disproving people in every event they go to, and their competition level, the teams that they play, keeps increasing. So I mean, this was obviously a high class game, but they still won by double digits, comfortable win over Cathedral. I mean, the Rubin twins were very impressive. As always, we've seen them at Hoop Hall. I was pretty impressed with Wes and Miles, and they did more of the same. I think Wes had 20 and Miles had 15, or maybe the other way around. And then Jalen Griffith was also very good. But, they have some very good pieces. We mentioned they play, at the time we're recording this, they take on Kenwood. So I'm saying, that's probably, if they win that, then they're probably the best team out there in Illinois.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, Simeon's been a program there for a long time, even back when Derrick Rose was out there slaying dragons. Really want to. If you ever get down a YouTube black hole Go look at some old Simeon footage on YouTube when Derrick Rose was there. Some of the most exciting games you'll ever see. Fastest guy I ever saw in high school. So shout out to Simeon. LuHi, Long Island Lutheran. I don't know if there are two bigger fans outside of their own program than you and I with this program. And really, I mean, they're 4-2 in the league, but they got some big wins at this one, going 2-0 at this event. Who'd they beat?
Yeah, they had they actually played the first day. They got a break the second day, and then played the third. First day they killed Bishop Walsh. I think they won by about 25 points, and then second game they just narrowly escaped a lost to Lalomir, but that was a fun game as well. One possession game, and we've seen a few of those this season from LuHi, but in those they've looked very comfortable from start to finish in certain spurts. So, I mean, like you mentioned, you and I are pretty high on them this year, and I think they're a team that could definitely do some damage in Geico when we get to that point. They kind of remind me of that prolific team last year who ended up winning first round against Sunrise Christian. So, you know, they were a scary team, and I've talked to a few players in the NIBC, and they recognize that LuHi is, you know, legit and right up there as a contender.
Yeah, let's break down their roster a little bit. Obviously, a guy that we love is VJ Edgecombe. We just updated our 2024 rankings. We moved him inside of our top 25, which I feel really justified. One of the best scorers there in the NIBC. I know he didn't play particularly at his best there in Indiana, but that's okay because they've got a team that I think Jaden Reed is probably one of the more impressive guards that I've seen this year. I really, really like the versatility of Connecticut-bound Jaden Ross, big wing. God's will, and do you know how to pronounce his last name? I don't off the top of my
head. I believe it's Ariarene.
Ariarene?
I believe so.
Oh man, that's amazing. Aaron, see, you've already said it better than me. Nevertheless, this is a team, and God's will was awesome out here in Arizona, the Hoop Hall West. That was really, really good. But really, was there a standout on LuHi, or was it just your typical LuHi balance that they bring to the table?
I'd definitely say it was Jaden Ross. I mean, that first game where they dominated, he took over 6 of 7 from 3, 8 or 9 rebounds as well. So, I mean, he shot really well over the weekend, kind of a player that can do it all. And I believe on most ranking sites, he's only a 3-star.
Wrong. Yeah, we're going to update him and move him up. Way off.
I'd say he was the best player for them this weekend. But once again, just, you know, a team that has so many contributors and so many guys that help them win, and that's why they're 4-2 in 4th place in the NIBC.
It's also why, if you're a Connecticut fan, you got to be super stoked, right? Like Stephen Castle is really their headliner coming in. But I'm with you, man. I think Jaden Ross is a top 50 guy and is a high ceiling guy. So high, in fact, I think if you're an NBA team, you're going to see him as a freshman go, oh, who's that guy? I want to know more about that guy. That's the guy that I'm interested in. Because he's got great positional size, and we know Connecticut's just absolutely killing it right now on the recruiting side of things. And that's one of the reasons why I think LuHi is as good as they are, because they've got good balance and good star power to go along with it too. So make sure you check out our 2024 rankings on HoopSeen.com. We just updated them. Are in the process of updating 2025 as well, but 2023 too, I think also for Jaden Ross, for example. We need to update those as well, only on HoopSeen.com. Let's pivot a little bit. Oak Hill, we haven't seen them this year, at least with our own eyes physically. Was this your first chance to see Oak Hill this year, or did you see them earlier in the season?
I think it was. No, I saw them in Kansas.
That's right. All I know is cold and basketball, and it all kind of blends together for me. What were your takeaways with Oak Hill?
I mean, I would say I was impressed with them. I mean, they did go 0-2, but they showed a lot of fight. And you got to remember, this is a team that just lost AJ Swinton and Zion Pipkin, 2 very good players. So obviously they're going to, have to figure it out where they go for the rest of the season. But they still have some key players that I really like. I was impressed by Holloway. I think you and I have talked about him a little bit this year, Josh Holloway. Yep. He's been pretty good. Drayton Jones really impressed me. Just a kid that always plays tough, gets a ton of blocks, and he's willing to do extra work and the dirty work to get them wins. Obviously, it didn't pan out from that this weekend, but I still was impressed by them, and I still think that they could be a team that's pretty threatening in the NIBC as well.
Yeah, it's weird just not seeing Steve Smith. We saw him sitting at the table while Oak Hill was playing across the country. I think, yeah, I was out here in Arizona, and he was watching the game on his phone, watching Oak Hill from afar. So I know he's having a hard time, like not feel like he needs to be there and coaching them. But certainly new era at Oak Hill basketball, that's for sure. Another team with some concerns is IMG. We saw them again back in December, and I think a month ago, almost the day. Yeah, I think you could make an argument they were the number one team in the country, or at least a contender for that. Now they've got some roster changes. Bryson Tucker is probably gone, or at least reportedly is not there anymore. I know they've got some injuries, but how do you think that will impact them? And do they have the depth to maintain the level of a team that can be a contender for the top spot in the league?
I really think they do. I mean, so this Oak Hill versus IMG game, obviously a team missing some key players. Oak Hill obviously doesn't have them anymore. IMG, Bryson Tucker, like we've heard reportedly, isn't there. And then, but they'll get Jamie Kaiser back, who's been a big factor the whole season for them pretty much. I think Blue Kane is really good as well.
Yeah.
He's shown it. I mean, he was their best player. I wouldn't say by far, because Hutchison had a pretty good weekend, but I'd say Blue Kane was their best player. So they definitely have, the pieces to maintain a very good team. But I feel like it's, like I mentioned, this is the area of, I think this is the time frame where these teams are kind of figuring out their formula for the rest of the season and being able to compete and win Geico Nationals. And it just hurts, with Kaiser going down and potentially losing your best player on the team, especially in this time frame for IMG. So,
those things on Instagram, those stories that'll pop up like that are suggested. I had one of those come through the other day, and it was a slam video, and they were asking high school players, who do you pattern your game after, or something like that. And Blue Kane said something that I really liked, and I was like, that's a pretty self-aware answer. He compared himself, where he said he likened his game to Tyrese Maxey, which I actually really liked a lot. What meant that he was always a downhill guy, always attacking the basket. And I'm with you, man. I think Blue Kane, committed to Georgia Tech, kind of under the radar. He played Under Armour circuit, so a lot of guys didn't see him as much as I think, say like Nike or something like that. I'm with you, man. I actually think he's a really, really good player, and I will be interested to see if he has to be like a 20 point per game scorer now for IMG, which he's certainly capable of. But our guy Andre Whitehead out of Tennessee has been talking about him since he was I think a seventh grader or something like that. He's next, and I actually I get it. I see it. Is that a good? I think that's a pretty good self comp.
I think so too. With him, it's interesting because it's like we saw at Hoop Hall, he was on the bench, coming off the bench as sixth or seventh man, and now he's thrown into that starting role as their number one scorer right now. So I mean, props to him. He had a great weekend, and he's been playing pretty well. I know they had, obviously, they got blown out by Sunrise that weekend, and the week where I was believed the St. John's lost, and Huntington Prep. But I think he's not a player that you're like, oh, like we have to rely on Blue Kane to lead the team. He's a very good player, and he can lead the team, I think.
Let me kind of throw a curveball to you a little bit. Let's talk about AZ Compass Prep. Let's talk about Wasatch, and let's talk about Sunrise and LaLu. Actually, let's talk about these four teams real fast.
Yeah.
So just kind of your quick hitters. Two things with AZ Compass. Jamari Phillips is there now from California, Arizona commitment. Brand new, right? How is his transition kind of going into place?
So far, I think it's been pretty smooth for him. That first game in Indiana, he shot the ball very well. I think his defense is very valuable, and especially that's going to be a big, obviously, thing to take in when you're coming onto the number one defensive team in the NIBC. You obviously have to perform and maintain that standard. So I think his defense has impressed me most. But AZ Compass has really struggled with shooting this year. They've been really on and off. I mean, I saw them go 0 for 14 from 3 in a game. They didn't shoot the greatest either at this event either. But I mean, he definitely had some bright spots, not only on defense, but his shooting is definitely, I'd say he's maybe even the best shooter on the team.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so.
I mean, they have a lot of shooters. They just haven't been getting shots to fall this season, but I think he's transitioning in pretty well.
They have two guys that you like that stepped up pretty well. It seems like at least from my impression this year, when they need to play out of the backcourt, that Jaden Ross has been able to deliver. The St. Mary's signee out of Utah,
Jordan.
Jordan Ross. Sorry,
Jaden's
see, we got too many Rosses, too many Jadens. It's like being a parent of 7 kids. You just kind of forget everybody's name. Yeah, Jordan. Sorry, Jordan. Jordan Ross stepped up and was really good in the clutch. What did he do in particular? Like, how would you describe what he did out there?
I love it because Justin, this play style that he had and this aggression was the same type of play style that we saw on his home court in Utah when AC Compass played Sunrise and he won that player of the game. He'll go downhill and he's so good at attacking and drawing contact and being able to finish at the hoop that you almost want to go with him every time. I mean, it's these late game situations when AZ Compass is down, which they were down 8 with I think 2 or 3 minutes left against Oak Hill, ended up winning in overtime. But he'll just attack, and he's been on, I feel like Jordan's the best player for this team because he's been on these winning teams, and I feel like he really knows what he has to do and what the team has to do to pick up a win in desperate times like those.
You know, his ability to be clutch is so good, and I think that's really kind of shown through pretty well this season. I know Trent Pierce, you want to mention him as well, Missouri commitment. What did he do?
I mean, he had a huge 25-point performance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 6.
Long time coming.
6 for 8 from 3.
Okay.
This was in the first game against their win that first day against Legacy. But I loved it because I haven't seen this side of Trent Pierce's game the whole season, and he looked like a totally different player out there.
Oh, wow.
He was way more aggressive, and if he can maintain that and keep that aggression both on offense and defense, which he was doing by blocking shots, he even had a few dunks. One, I think it might have been on someone as well, just attacking and obviously hitting shots as well. I think he could really do some damage over at Mizzou in a program that's a ranked team this year.
They're very good. We just did a big story on HoopSeen.com about coaches that are on the rise, and Dennis Gates was a primary guy that I mentioned in the story, who was really good at developing players. So Trent Pierce, good on you for picking a place that can take your game to the next level. All right, let me rapid fire real fast. Your first impression or your takeaway impression, if you will, of these 3 teams that you saw out there. LaLu, we'll start with them.
I think LaLu's a team that has a lot of fight. I don't know what's up with Tyler Bailey. I heard he was hurt, which is a pretty big loss if they can't have him. But Gus Yalden, Caleb Glenn, 2 players I love to watch, and obviously 2 players that could definitely do some damage when you're playing them on a night-to-night basis. And they kind of showed that, especially Caleb with his game-winning shot in their first game.
Sunrise is a team that I think is a contender every time they step onto a floor at 5-2. What was your takeaway about them?
I think it seems to me like Matas is getting better with every game he's played this season. And I mean, that's a very scary thing. Considering he averaged 20 points at this event as well. So, I mean, obviously running through him helps them best. They lost against Montverde. I think they do play Montverde again at Hoop Hall Classic, which, should be a pretty fun rematch. So, I mean, expect Matas to be at his best, as well as, John Bull, Layden, and the crew for Sunrise. They're in that big rematch.
I think those 3 guys that you mentioned to me, when you look long term, are as 3 as interesting guys there is in high school basketball, and Matas and Layden Blocker and then John Bull. I think all 3 of those guys, their ceilings are ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Let's wrap things up here with Wasatch Academy, a team that we've seen quite a bit in a number of different places. What was your takeaway with these guys this week?
Wasatch has dropped a few, but I mean, they're in every game, and it's 1 possession games. I feel like it's kind of like Montverde. Montverde is so good in these late game situations, and they win all the close games. But Wasatch has just been, unfortunately, on the other end and has had a few things not go their way. But I mean, it's like they're a team that's going to fight to the end. And when they're down by double digits, it seems like it's a guaranteed comeback for them. I mean, they have so many weapons. RJ Jones. I like Malik Diallo. He was playing pretty good as well this weekend. And I think, Jeremiah Johnson, we've been pretty high on him as well. But I feel like Colin Murray-Boyles could be named one of the best players this season in the NIBC. He's just been so consistent all year. Like I said, automatic double-double, which I mentioned earlier in the year.
He is. He gets his hand on every rebound. He's going to replace Gigi Jackson in their lineup at South Carolina. And I know Gigi Jackson, you can talk about a first-round draft pick. Mm-hmm. But Carter Murray-Bowles has been, I would argue, I don't know if he's the most improved guy, because that's saying that he wasn't good to begin with, which is probably not accurate. But he certainly has improved his profile more than any player I think there is in the country when it comes to front court. A guy ranked outside of like 130 to 170, somewhere in there. He's a guy that I think is firmly planting himself within the top 75, top 80, no doubt about it, in this class of 2023. Griff, where are you off next to with the NIBC? You're headed out back east again?
Yeah, out back east once again. Hoop Ball Classic, which is, a huge one. So we'll have some NIBC coverage, and I mean, just high school basketball coverage in general. That's a huge event with tons of top teams across the nation. So that should be a fun one.
Do you have a winter coat as a San Diego guy? We've talked about this before, haven't we?
I do. I learned to get one quickly.
Okay, smart. This one might be the coldest one. It might be the coldest one. That's why I like to watch it from my couch at home. That's for sure. So, well, you can keep up with, or I almost called you Carter. We keep up with Griffin's coverage throughout the week coming up here with the Hoop Hall on Twitter and, of course, on HoopSeen.com. Griff, what's your Twitter handle?
It's at Griff Greenberg, GreenBerg.
Easy enough. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. Make sure you subscribe to HoopSeen TV on YouTube. Tons of content coming up as we finish out this Scholastic season. Of course, the travel season is right around the corner too. If you're a coach that wants to play on our circuit, you can register now at hoopseen.com/events. But Griff, until next time, stay warm, stay hydrated, stay in the gym. I think you'll be fine if you stay in the gym. You don't have to worry about all the other things. It should be pretty good, man. I'm excited for you and excited to see your coverage coming up.
Yeah, thanks for having me on once again.
All right, you bet. This has been the Fast Break right here on HoopSeen TV, and we'll see you next time right here on hoopseen.com.